Hey guys, tonight we drift back to a warm, heavy evening in ancient Babylon, where the air clings to your skin and even the palace walls seem to sweat under the weight of summer. You find yourself walking across polished stone floors, past flickering oil lamps, toward a chamber where the most powerful man in the known world lies unusually still. This is Alexander the Great, conqueror of Persia, breaker of empires, collector of titles that barely fit on a scroll, and right now he can't even lift a cup of wine. You probably won't survive this. Not the campaigns, not the fevers, not the endless marching, and definitely not the political chaos quietly forming just outside this room. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, go ahead and comment your location and the local time where you are. It's always fascinating to see where in the world these stories are drifting into sleepy ears. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of the chamber, watching as Alexander lies on a low couch, his body wrapped in fine linens that are already damp with sweat. The year is 323 BCE, and Babylon, usually loud with traders, soldiers, and gossip, is strangely hushed. Something is wrong, and everyone knows it, even if no one wants to say it out loud. The mainstream story, passed down through ancient historians like Arrian and Plutarch, is that Alexander has been struck by a sudden illness after days of feasting and drinking. Some accounts say it began with a sharp pain after he drank a large bowl of wine, because moderation has never really been his thing. From there, the fever creeps in, slow but relentless, like a desert wind that refuses to leave. You can almost feel it yourself, the heat rising off his skin, the way his breathing grows heavier with each passing hour. Servants move quietly around him, bringing cool water, whispering prayers, adjusting the curtains to block the harsh sunlight. Nobody wants to disturb the king, but nobody wants to leave either. It's that awkward moment where everyone pretends everything is fine, even though it clearly isn't. And here's where things get a little strange. Some ancient writers claim that despite the fever, Alexander's body doesn't decay in the usual way after death. In fact, it remains remarkably preserved for days, almost as if time itself is hesitating. A quirky tidbit, often overlooked, is that a few sources suggest people began whispering that he might not actually be dead at first, just resting in some kind of divine sleep, which honestly sounds like the world's most intense nap. Historians still argue whether Alexander's illness was caused by malaria, typhoid fever, poisoning, or something else entirely. There's even a fringe theory involving West Nile virus, which would be an impressively modern twist for a 2,300-year-old mystery. The truth is, nobody knows for sure. But as you stand there in the dim room, watching his chest rise and fall more slowly each time, the cause almost feels irrelevant. What matters is that the unstoppable has, quite suddenly, stopped. You glance around and notice the tension building in subtle ways. His generals, men who have marched with him across deserts and mountains, linger just outside the chamber. They speak in low voices, their expressions carefully neutral. But you can sense it, calculation, concern, maybe even a flicker of opportunity. Because here's the uncomfortable reality. Alexander has no clear adult heir. Sure, there's Roxana, his wife, who is pregnant. And there's his half-brother Aridaeus, who, let's just say, isn't exactly known for strong leadership. That leaves a massive empire stretching from Greece to India with no obvious person to hold it together. It's like building the world's largest sandcastle and then realizing the tide is already coming in. Inside the chamber, Alexander tries to speak. You lean in slightly along with everyone else. According to tradition, when asked who should inherit his empire, he supposedly whispers, "To the strongest," which is either a poetic final statement or the ancient equivalent of saying, "Good luck, guys." Not exactly helpful. The room grows quieter as the hours pass. The light shifts from gold to amber to a soft, fading gray. The smell of incense thickens, curling into the corners like a protective blanket. You notice how even the smallest sounds, footsteps, fabric, a distant murmur, feel amplified in the stillness. At one point, soldiers are allowed to file past him one by one, This is another widely accepted detail. Alexander's troops, fiercely loyal, want to see him one last time. You can imagine the line stretching through the palace corridors. Men who have followed him across half the world now reduced to silent witnesses. As you stand there, you might expect some grand, cinematic final moment. A speech, a gesture, something dramatic. But history, like sleep, often slips away quietly. His voice fades, his strength leaves him, and then, almost without ceremony, Alexander the Great dies. Or at least, that's what everyone eventually agrees has happened. But here's where the story begins to take an unusual turn. Because instead of immediate decay, the natural, expected process, something about his body seems different. Slower, suspended, as if the same force that carried him across continents is lingering just a little longer, refusing to let go. The attendants exchange glances. The generals grow even more uneasy. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a question begins to form, soft but persistent. What do you do with a body that doesn't behave like it should? Especially when that body belongs to a man who was treated as more than human in life. You step back from the couch, the weight of the moment settling over you like the heavy Babylonian air. Outside, the empire is already beginning to shift, to fracture, to quietly pull itself apart. But in here, in this dimly lit room, everything is still focused on one thing: the king who conquered the world, and the strange stillness of what remains. You linger in the corridor just outside the chamber, where the air feels cooler but no less heavy, as if the entire palace is holding its breath. Behind you, Alexander lies still, too still, and ahead of you, the future of his empire begins to unravel in hushed voices and sideways glances. No one announces it officially at first. There's no grand proclamation, no trumpet echoing through Babylon. Instead, the realization spreads the way gossip always does. Quietly, unevenly, carried by servants, guards, and the subtle change in how people look at one another. The king is gone. And now comes the uncomfortable part. There is no clear plan. A well-established historical fact is that Alexander left behind no fully recognized adult successor. His wife Roxana is pregnant, yes, but the child isn't born yet. His half-brother, Aridaeus, is technically of royal blood, but he is widely considered unfit to rule independently. So you end up with something far worse than grief, a vacuum. And humans, as history gently reminds us, are not very good at leaving vacuums alone. You watch as the generals, men with names like Perdiccas, Ptolemy, Seleucus, and Antigonus, begin to gather in small clusters. They've all spent years fighting beside Alexander, sharing in his victories, surviving battles that probably should have ended them 10 times over. There's camaraderie there, sure, but there's also ambition, a quiet, calculating kind. It's almost like a group project where the one competent person just left.